Greetings, programs. Sorry, I'm just getting a little distracted there. Welcome back to another episode of Dungeons and Dragons. How to play D&D better than you used to. Summer got crazy. It got hot up here, and then Ren Fair happened. Had to get all that gear together for Ren Fair. That was crazy. I was going to take all these cool GoPro pictures. I took nothing. All I did was go and have an awesome time. It was great. So someday we might be able to document the madness that happens at Ren Fair, but not today. What are we here to talk about, Hanker and Fairnail? Quit beating around the bush. First of all, I want to thank everyone for watching the videos, sounding off. Tons of comments and questions coming in. It's just getting bigger and bigger every week. That's awesome. We blasted right past 2,000 subscribers. We're trucking. We're going to hit 3,000 before you know it. So it's great. Also, a lot of great responses from people who are trying some of the stuff from the channel, having some successes. We even got a guy posting pictures and forgot to put his pants on. Or maybe he didn't forget. Maybe he didn't want to have pants on in the pictures. But anyways, regardless, suffice it to say, things are going well. So, a lot of deep thoughts have been coming up as a result of all this awesome collaboration with you guys, all the questions that lead me to think deeper about how I'm playing my D&D. Because I want to play more better. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to play a bunch of lame D&D. So, I got a whole series that I'm going to try to shoot tonight. So I'm going to start with this cup of coffee. Now normally, you see me slugging down a bottle of mead or a whole bottle of Jaeger or 14 beers on a video, but not for this one. You got to deal with an old man sipping on a cup of joe. Wisdom buff. I wanted to start a series about critical mechanics, key mechanics. So sometimes I get a little, excited by crafting. So I have a ton of craft videos. And then also I get excited because I like to balance out individual encounters with a tremendous amount of mechanical complexity, discoverability, and dynamic sort of play, all within a very contained space. That's the room design series, which you guys have been digging on. But I haven't really gotten into some of the fundamental mechanics that I use with my group, that my group uses with me. I also want to encourage players to take the world literally. So instead of, kind of interpreting the dungeon or the board or the hallway and, having to imagine meaning, and then the DM thinks to himself, oh God, I didn't think of that, but yeah, okay, that's what happens. You don't want that to happen. I like the players to literally be scrutinizing the game, looking for mechanical assistance or mechanical advantage they can use in the encounter, and then be rewarded with discovering it. So, what is the act of scouring the game board? How does that manifest itself in the form of a character, not just a player? And remember, the players are having fun, but it's all about the characters, man. It's all about what they do and why they do it, and especially how they do it. So, what is the act of scouring the game board for details and usable objects, environmental components? What is that? You all know exactly what it is, man. That is making perception checks. And that is my first of the Key Mechanics series. We've all made about an infinite number of boring ass perception checks while we're playing D&D. All right, you looking down the hallway and you're like, I'm gonna make a perception check. It's 10 feet wide, bitch. You're like, that's all I get? Damn, man, I could have rolled like backflip. I could have done a backflip. Instead, I looked down and saw that the corridor is 10 feet wide. Or like, you'll make a big high perception roll and the result will be like, well, yeah, you pretty much see all the detail that we've talked about. Now, that's a bummer. And here's the bigger problem. It actually discourages players from building high perception characters. So, right now, and I don't know about you guys, but generally, the high perception character is often, not really viewed as heroic. It's more just like, oh, we're making perception checks. Okay, whatever. Yeah, we do these all the time. Yeah, 12. Can we get on to killing the guy, please? That's a bummer. Just like every part of your game, if the perception component of your game starts to wither, you're doing it wrong, B. So get with it. Follow Hanker and Fairnail's tips. Now, exactly how how do you do it? Well, instead of just being abstract with it and getting all Niels Bohr on your ass, I'm going to show you a couple of specific examples. So if I could just clean up my Aclo, I have figures and dice and glowing gelatinous cubes everywhere. Okay, so here's my first example. Is right here, and I think you can see it's HD, man. You have Stills, my goblin rogue, and Helm, my ill-fated fighter, running across this stone plateau being chased by Grick, who's a sort of a battle ogre, cannibal, caveman, barbarian, miner. So he's chasing them across. We're nowhere near high enough level to beat a challenge rating 6 ogre miner brewmaster. We're doomed. So Helm, being the dumb character who's always just thinks he's cooler than everything, turns around and he's like, don't worry, Stills, I'll kill this mofo. Starts battling him, steadily losing hit points. But Stills, being awesome, takes a look down and realizes, man, I've always had this like 14 wisdom score of mine laying around, so I'm going to do some perception checks. Now, instead of just saying, I do a perception check, he's like, well, okay, I'm going to cruise over here. I'll do a perception check on this piece of ruins. La 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 la. And as you know, we do single DCs for our entire room. So let's, for the sake of argument, we'll say this is a DC 15 room. Pretty easy room. So he's got a +2 on his roll. He rolls a 9. He gains no new information about the ruins. But now, as the DM, it's not that fun, even on a failed perception roll, to just be like, nothing. You get nothing. No soup. It's cooler if you say, well, you take a closer look at the ruins, nothing about them is special, but you notice that these have recently tumbled and been broken. Interesting. Okay, you're not giving away the mechanic, but you are kind of getting ready for it. You're foreshadowing. So as long as you've got the data in your book nice and clear and easy to remember, you can drop these hints before the successful perception roll happens. Foreshadowing on a failed perception roll. There's your tip to write down. Boom! Wow, Helm takes a couple of steps back because he's being hammered. Oh God, dude, I'm at like 1/3 of my HP. Help, this guy's crazy. Boosh, another 2d6, right? So Stills is like, well, there's got to be something. So he comes over here, comes over to the edge. This is just a huge gap right here. There's like a big fissure, canyon, gulf, whatever. The gaping maw. And looks down, there's no way they can make the leap across. So he turns around and fires an arrow. He's like, does maximum damage. Grick doesn't drop, he doesn't even blink. And that's when Stills and Helm both realize that we gotta come up with something here. So Helm just keeps fighting. Helm isn't gonna say, yeah, I'll go ahead and make a perception check. Hell no, as a DM, I wouldn't allow that. I mean, he is locked in combat with a 12-foot tall ogre dentist. And he can't just be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm gonna investigate my surroundings. So he's gotta rely on his teammates. So Stills comes on over finally, makes his perception check, right? Baboosh. And for the sake of argument, he did not roll a 2 there. He rolled like an 18. Did great. Puts his modifier on and he's got a mod 20. He's killing it. DM says, well, you notice this piece of ruin has not only recently toppled, but is lying on 2 huge round logs. So Still's like, oh hey, I saw National Geographic one time where they're like rolling moai on logs. So I bet that's what's going on right here. And sure enough, and this is where the board being literal is really cool. So the player sees this and goes, oh, I see it. I see the physical mechanics of this. So Stills gets in position. Another turn passes. Helm is almost dead. He tries to push it. Stills goes for the strength check. This thing is way too big. He fails the check. Oh God, Helm, I need you. So Helm throws a smoke bomb. Poof. Grick gets confused. They come over. Team. So if you guys do what we do, if you work together, then everyone can roll a d20 to try to make the target. So both Stills rolls and Helm rolls. So between the two of them, they get the roll. The statue rolls on the log. The first one falls into the abyss, and the ruins barely manage to cross. Now you really want to be cool as a dungeon master. When you set up your board, set it up just so that the measurements match the pieces just the right way. If it's kind of like this, it doesn't feel quite as dramatic. But if it just fits, it's just made to fit like that, for some reason the players always get a huge thrill out of it. So now Helm goes back, he's like, hey, screw you, over here, attack me, and it gives Stills the chance to escape. He makes the dex check easily. Helm comes in, takes the opportunity attack, takes a few more damage. Grick is confused. He makes the dex check, and they both go running across. They get into position as Grick, who's far slower, starts climbing up, and down it goes, and Grick falls into the abyss. They never would have been able to beat Grick just by hounding him and pummeling him, but using perception, they use the environment to get the job done. Okay, so that's case number one. Okay, the second case is similar, but to even bigger effect. Now this case actually happened Friday night when we were having another round of battling siege engines, which is always stressful and fascinating for the group. But this one was charging forward. Now, with each forward click that he would do, so he'd move 4 steps forward, and then he would finish his move by extending the spears like that, so he'd be doing a ton of damage. So this thing, when it's moving, is really deadly. When it stands still, it's much easier to fight. So the players are trying to figure out how to get it to lock up, and they're trying to fight the guys on board. You've got this pilot up here who's a CR6 mage, so he's casting like bomb, cone of cold, and fireball, so it's crazy. So realizing they might be outclassed, Twigs, our druid, who's generally the character who seeks the secrets of the environment and runs around and does lots of perception and investigation and tries to figure out how can we not all die. Earlier, a bomb had gone off and shaken the whole forest. She does some perception on this tree right here and investigates the tree. It turns out it's about to topple because of the explosion earlier, so the team works together. They tip the tree over. Boo, boosh, and it hits the front of the siege engine. Not only knocks it back a click and jams it from moving forward anymore, but the tremor of the tree hitting it. This guy, the mage, who's kind of the pilot, he is shaken and has to make a dex check. Epically, he fails the dex check terribly. I think rolls a 2. Falls off of here. Now this may not seem that huge, but this is actually like 25 feet. So if you go by the rules, it's 5d6 of falling damage, right? 1 per click. So, boosh, right next to the furnace, lands, rolls huge on the damage, breaks his neck and dies. Now they were having a hell of a time killing this guy. But just through the use of perception, they got the damage spike that they needed, not only to halt the siege engine, which eventually led to its defeat, but just on a pair of lark combination rolls, actually beat the enemy. So in my first case, it was like, use perception to find a way to escape when you're outclassed. But there's another case, which I think many of you out there who like to fight and like to kill would think is cooler, is use perception to actually damage spike like crazy. Gotta use that environment, man. Now, okay, it's all fine and dandy, but there's a linchpin, and this is what I mentioned in the beginning, and this is where you guys gotta come through because you play D&D like big old badasses. As the DM, you've got to build the opportunities to make perception work. Now that means hiding things, that means setting up your environment to always have some powerful mechanics, and it means not being so damn subtle that it's bogus. So here's another case. Take our little platform here. Now you guys may have seen these before. These are teeny little thin styrene squares. They kind of just look like decoration. So you can see right there. They kind of just look like odd cobbles, you know, and then you got minis moving around and there's a lot happening and you kind of just start not really, whatever. But what you can do as a DM is use these as perception investigative locations. So they're locations where they are basically a little glowing quest item in video game parlance, but it's like a spot where you can go perform a perception check. Now this gives you a very simple mechanism as the DM to reveal cool things. Let's say you have an arrow of slaying that's in your map and it does 10d10 on one shot and then dissolves, right? And so you set it in the map so that if people are looking around, they have this chance to shoot one badass arrow. How do you hide that in the map in a way that isn't arbitrary? You do this. You put this guy here and you know that that arrow is on that square, like in the melted skeletal hand of a fallen soldier. right? You don't just say, somewhere around the map there's a melted arrow thing and it's really powerful, but I'm not sure where it's going to be, but I'll see if anybody makes a perception check and then I'll kind of wing it. No, don't do that. That's not the Drunkards and Dragons way. That's just bunk. That's making stuff up. This way, you actually have a trigger point. So then, if you have a character who's smart enough, he investigates this little point, remove it from the board, and then he looks around and he's going, oh, and he realizes there's another one. He goes over, investigates that, and that's where you put your trap. But make sure that you know, as the DM, that this one's the arrow of slaying and this one's the trap. Don't cheat, so they always get the arrow first. So there's an inverse effect that's really interesting. He comes over, does perception on the trap, triggers the trap, boing, my face, it's cutting me. Then he realizes there's another one of these on the board, and as he walks over, he has trepidation. He's like, is this just another stupid, DM booby trap? That's a great place for a player to be when they're like wondering if they should even do perception on a little pile of gravel. That is the exact kind of suspense you want to play with your characters. So that's another idea. And then my final idea for you, how to encourage perception. It's the silliest of all. It's what you could call the Mario Brothers version of the mechanic. So if you're doing, maybe a one-off with your drunken buddies for somebody's bachelor party, which D&D bachelor parties, they do happen. And you want it to be more casual and you just want it to be fun, you do this. So you can see. So you just take your gold coins and you just stick them on the map. So as they're battling and Umber Hulk. So I'm battling the Umber Hulk and I'm like, this is getting crazy. Then I can come right over and do perception on the gold coin. And the gold coin is basically an abstract game node. And underneath is a treasure. There's a +2 longsword under there because this is a gold coin perception point. And all it does is keep the players moving, keep them doing things other than just killing and rampaging. There you go, guys. So not only do you want to build the perception components into your game, make sure that as your players are unfolding and growing, that you are mentioning to them, maybe as part of your opening session recap, maybe as part of the end of the session, Basque Fest, or the Reaping as we call it, that you remind them, it's like, hey, it'd be really cool to have, one of you guys really take on this scout role. It seems like you're doing it. It's cool. So is there a way that, because no one will want to get items or buffs that build perception. I mean, come on. You have 10,000 gold to spend. Are you really going to worry about your perception roll? Well, if you're an awesome player, yes, that's exactly the kind of stuff you think about, because you realize that, the pen is mightier than the sword. In this case, more like the monocle is mightier than the sword. The binoculars are mightier than the sword. It just doesn't make a very good saying. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. That's enough about perception. So the advice is don't just overlook perception and just use it so you can tell people you hear dogs growling in the other room. And don't worry about pre-writing all your text that is revelatory text when they make their perception roll. You don't have to have frickin' Shakespeare to tell them that they noticed that the tree is all rickety and is about to topple. Now, if you do have a couple key pieces of text that you've pre-written, it can be pretty cool. There's a crow eating a guy's eyeball and whoa, it's the Eye of Vecna. Whatever, I don't know. But just make sure you put it in italic. So that's it. Perception, it's cool. Use it. Don't just do combat. Do the other parts and encourage players who aren't just berserkers to use their heads and participate. One of the fundamental precepts of good DMing, Dawnforged Cast and other people have said it. Make sure you find ways for everyone to shine in the group. Not everyone wants to cut heads off and collect scrota. Okay, so for the sharper, more sort of acute player, you need to have the rewards set up so that them investigating is filled with a lot of fucking awesome. Okay, that's it for me. Strength, honor, and coffee. And I'll see you guys on the interwebs. Remember, give me that thumbs up if liking is an emotion that you're feeling at this time. If you're feeling disappointment and rage, then still click the thumbs up button and then go outside and kick the bushes.